Hi, everybody. Cindy, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Think we had a chance to have a conversation before this, and one thing that I thought was so interesting is there's so much that we don't know about you, and you've had a phenomenal career, and it's spanned so many different industries. And not only were you the original supermodel, and you created the sort of the concept that spanned generations, but you've really figured out how to build a business and build a brand at a very young age. And now you have a skincare line and a furniture line, and you have a book that just came out. And so I'm hoping you could start off by telling us, at what point when you were a young model did you realize that it was more than just being a model, that you had to build your brand?
Wow, I mean, we were talking when we spoke, it's like no one was really talking about your brand. And now, like, you hear 12-year-old kids going, well, that's not my brand. But, you know, I think because I was a student and I love to learn, and I still continue to love to learn. So even as a model, there's so much to learn. I mean, people don't necessarily understand, like, there is a skill, you can get better at it. And also you're surrounded by these incredible people, marketing, advertising, photographers, whatever, designers. So I just tried to pay attention and keep my eyes open. And I think that through that process, and I don't know if it was somewhere in my mid-20s, I realized maybe not so much, oh, I have a brand, but like, is this me? Does this make sense for this image of Cindy Crawford? And that gave me a way, that was how I make decisions of what companies to align myself with or not, and then eventually do my own. I did an exercise video and, you know, passion projects, things that I was really interested in. And yeah, at a certain point, and I think I said this to you yesterday, like, I realized, like, I'm not a marketing expert, I'm not a financial expert, but I am the world's #1 expert on Cindy Crawford. It sounds funny, but it's like to just realize, like, I have great agents and publicists and business partners, but in the end, like, to really own that for myself and trust that my instincts about at least my own brand are the only ones that really matter.
You mentioned this moment when you were in a board meeting and you were surrounded by a bunch of men who were experts, mm-hmm. and you had the realization where you're like, actually, I do know what I'm talking about here. So what was that? I mean, there must have been moments of self-doubt when you're put in these new situations.
Yes.
How did you get over those moments?
Yeah. And again, we spoke yesterday, but I was talking about, like, I'm fortunate because of women, feminists before me. I never felt like I had to prove that I was as good as the boys. Like, I just grew up, I knew that I was, And then I went to college, and I was in chemical engineering, which you did not know about me, but I was at Northwestern, and I was on a chemical engineering scholarship. And I walked into one of my classes, and I remember the professor looked at me and was like, honey, you're in the wrong class. And I was so mad. It was the first time that I just felt like this snap judgment that he didn't think that I deserved to be there because of the way that I looked. And I was like, I'm gonna prove this guy wrong. I'm gonna ace this class. And then I started modeling, and modeling is the only job that I know anyway where women make more than men. And also that you're not being a woman and being feminine, and it's rewarded. It's not like something that you have to, hide. So I feel very fortunate that I got to be successful in a place where being a woman was celebrated. But there also were times where, the father figures, the boss was a guy, and it did take time for me to find my voice, and but it was just through sitting in the room, and again, they would pull out the P&Ls, and I mean, I did do calculus, but for some reason, now I look at that P&L and I'm like, oh, I can figure it out, but it's not natural to me. But so I keep my mouth shut maybe during that part, or I'm not afraid to ask questions. But then they start talking about marketing and advertising, and guess what? I know a lot more than a lot of them because I've worked with a lot of different people. And then you say something, you take a chance, and someone agrees with you or says, oh, good point. And then that gives you confidence to the next time you have something to say it.
And did you have any techniques? You mentioned dealing with people who are like the older male boss. Did you have any techniques that you use to help people take you seriously?
I always felt like if people didn't take me seriously, it said more about them than me. So I never felt like, oh, I should carry a philosophy book around so they know I'm smart or use big words. But I did, sometimes in my job, people will ask you to do like crazy things. Like one time I was in Hawaii shooting, and the photographer said, we were shooting with some surfers, and he's like, can you get on the guy's shoulders? Well, first he goes, I'm wearing a gown, by the way, and high heels. He said, can you paddle out in the waves with the surfer, and then when he takes the wave in, climb on his shoulders and surf in with him. Oh, and by the way, don't get your hair wet. So I'm like thinking, because normally I would try to do it, and I was like, So I said, instead of saying no, I just said, gosh, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you just show me how to do that? And he's like, you know what, we're just going to do it on the sand. And so, that was, I guess, one little trick.
Yeah.
Can you just show me how to do that?
I think that's the funniest thing ever. I don't know why that really just strikes a chord with me in some of my experiences.
I'm sure you've been there.
Yeah. So you had the exercise video, and you had a website during the first .com boom, and now you have a skincare line and a furniture line. How did both of these two very different businesses come about?
Right. Well, I think my first kind of taste at being an entrepreneur was to do the exercise video, but that was something that I really was passionate about. I was working out, and I had this great trainer, and I would constantly get asked, who's your trainer? What do you do? And I just realized, wow, my sisters, my mom, my friends, they can't afford to go to a trainer. How do I share Radu with my sisters, my mom? And Jane Fonda, fortunately, had already set, the stage. She'd done very successful workout tapes, but they weren't necessarily for my generation. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that, but for like in a grittier, more real, like you actually see real sweat kind of way. And so I produced it, and I hired the team, and it was, taking a chance, not being afraid to take a chance, but because I really believed in it, I believed in my vision and myself, I was willing to take that chance. And then because it was successful, that then made me think, oh, okay, now if I have another idea, maybe that's okay. So I had been with Revlon for 14 years, and it was great, and I learned a lot. And when I was 35, my contract was up, and it was time to renew. But I just was like, I was ready to do something else, and I was very interested at that point, and I'm even more interested now in anti-aging. And I knew this doctor in Paris that I'd been introduced to, and he and we kept saying, even when I was with Revlon, it would be great to do something together, but I couldn't. And then finally I could. And so we decided, okay, we want to do a skincare line, but then now how to do it. And that's where, you go out and you kind of do like a little roadshow, and you meet with all, high end. We met with more drugstore, and we met with Guthrie Ranker, who's an infomercial company, and trying to decide what worked. And in the end, I chose Guthrie Ranker because I felt like, that industry is so competitive, and just to buy one ad in Vogue is so expensive. You're going to spend all your money like on advertising. Whereas, an infomercial, you get a half an hour and you have a chance to tell a real story. And I felt like we had a compelling story, and that just felt like the best place to do it. It wasn't like an overnight, everyone thinks, oh, you go on TV, you sell stuff, you're like, gazillionaire overnight. It wasn't like that, but I learned, I brought a very strong, I was like, everything you've done in the past, that's what I don't want to do. I was kind of like, I'm going to do this my way. And they listened very nicely. But in the end, I learned a lot from them too. I realized, oh, they kind of, there's a reason they're so successful. Yeah. But they let me be a collaborator, and I love that. And now, cut to, 15 years later, and we have a really great business, and no signs of stopping. And then the furniture business was a little bit different, and that was a guy named Jeff Seaman, whose dad had owned a furniture company in the East Coast called Siemens. Like anyone, I could sing the jingle if I sang, but I don't. And his dad sold the company. Here he was 35 years old, and he could retire, but he was bored, and he started his own company called Rooms to Go, which is in the southeastern part of the United States. And I think he had seen a picture of my house in like Elle Decor or something, and his little light bulb went off and said, So he got in touch with me, and that was in some ways a bigger risk, because even though I loved decorating and had done, as we moved different houses and apartments, wasn't sure that people would be interested in what I had to say about that. Like, I didn't feel as credible in that field. Cosmetics and makeup, everyone understands, yes, a model would know about that, and that I have access to that. But I met with them, and again, it's about taking chances, and I pretty much will take any meeting. I'm always interested. I always can learn something, even if it's what I don't want to do. And I met them, and then we decided to go forward, and that's also been over 10 years now, and that's a completely different business, and I love it because it's not contingent. It's not about Cindy the model, it's more about Cindy the homemaker, the wife, the mother, someone who's been in the world of fashion, so has been influenced by style. But I feel like it gives me permission to not, I'm 51, I just turned 51 a couple weeks ago, and to, thank you. I always say it's better than the alternative, so. But to those businesses and Meaningful Beauty, because Meaningful Beauty is about looking great at every age. They are businesses that will grow with me and that I can grow with them.
You had a very interesting or very powerful lesson when we were talking yesterday about this idea that it's worth failing if you do something your way, and that if you have to be true to yourself, even if it means it doesn't work out.
Yes, I think since now it is so comfortable for everyone to talk about like their brand, I personally would rather, and even with, like for instance, with Guthrie Ranker, if there's something that just doesn't feel right for me, even though I know it's going to sell more product, I would rather not sell more product, but be true to my vision of, how I want to present myself or what I think is right or wrong. Because, and if you do something that you believe in, if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, at least you didn't compromise yourself. So
I think that's a very, very important takeaway. We were talking a little bit about social media, because now, when you started out modeling, there was no such thing.
No.
And now you have to be producing content. The modeling world has changed, and you as a celebrity, as a personality, have to be producing content constantly.
Yes.
How would you describe your social media strategy?
Well, it was difficult. I didn't really get Facebook or Twitter. I don't think anyone got Twitter in the beginning, really. It was kind of like, is this new? What is this? How am I using this for real people? I think what's interesting now is like all the social media, they've kind of developed their own personalities, and I go to Facebook for this, or I go to Instagram for this. But in the beginning, I don't think it was as clear cut for most people. So the first one that I really gravitated toward was Instagram, because it's pictures, and I'm from a world that we were all about creating images. So that was the first one I personally engaged with and liked. But it is definitely, I call it it's like this hungry little animal that you have to feed every day. And sometimes, if I was left to, if I wasn't Cindy Crawford, a business, I probably would have it, but if I didn't go on it for weeks at a time, that would be okay. And if I saw something inappropriate or funny that maybe wasn't on brand, but I personally thought it was funny, I would post it. But I am a brand, and I am representing a bigger thing. So I try to keep my posts within that. And, so obviously I feel like my brand is about health and beauty. It's about style, which includes home or fashion or whatever. Then it's about family. And I guess that's kind of those are the different boxes that I play
And so
in.
do you do social media other than Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, I now have, I have a Facebook and I do Twitter, but I don't, that's not, it's kind of like Instagram, I would say, is the main engine, and then things from there. But then there's certain things that I go, oh, this is better for Twitter, or this is better. I'm even starting to get what's good for what now, like longer things. I'm like, Facebook, I can share this article on Facebook.
Do you Snapchat at all?
I don't do Snapchat. My children would kill me, I think. They're like, just stay out of Snapchat.
You gotta give them some space.
I know.
But so you have teenagers, and as they enter this modeling world or dip their toes in, or however deep they are now, how would you advise them to use social media and to think about how the world has changed?
Well, I think it's so hard for kids. So they, of course, they have their official one, and then they have their Finstas, right? Doesn't everyone have their fake Insta? If you're a mom and you don't know what a Finsta is, I'm telling you, your kid has one. But even within that, like, you have to, like, to teach your children, like, nothing is, if you Snapchat it, someone can screen grab it, so it's like, if you wouldn't want us to see it, or you wouldn't want your grandmother to see it, or, don't post it. But for them, because they are both my kids have started doing some modeling stuff, and like, they have the pressure to build their social media following, because companies now, if it's up to you and another model and they have a bigger social media following, they will go with the social media following. So it is now something that it's a commodity that you have to, trade upon. And it is important. But I kind of like, it's a bummer because my daughter's 15 and I really don't want her like thinking about, well, my brand. But at the same time, if she wants to play in that world, she does have to think that way.
But for the modeling business, is there a risk now of models being overexposed in a way that you didn't have to worry about when you were starting?
I do. I haven't figured that out yet because I think we haven't had enough time to prove this out. But I did an interview with Kendall Jenner for Vogue, and we were talking about social media. And in some ways, like, I'm kind of envious that I didn't have that as a young model, because it's like you get to be your own publicist. You get to kind of, just ask Donald Trump. You get to tell your own version of facts. And so like for a celebrity, like when I was a young model, I needed a journalist to tell the world who I was. Like, I didn't have that direct connection. And now you do. You can kind of say, or if you're in a philanthropy, or you're an animal lover, whatever, you get to share that on social media. So I do think it's a great asset, but it's also a huge responsibility. And most models are quite young when they start, and it's a lot of pressure to be PC and not make mistakes. But the other thing that I worry about is if I had a fan when I was on the cover of Vogue or whatever, my fans would be like, they'd have to wait a month to see what I was doing again. Now they're just inundated on sometimes more than one time a day, images of these people. And I said to Kendall, I just wonder I worry, is the use-up rate going to be faster? And we don't know yet. Because it hasn't been around that long.
And do you think models of her generation will be able to build a career with the longevity and variety and diversity of your career? It's like the longevity is the part I worry about. I definitely think the diversity is more so, because they really are, like, model agents have really shifted to understand that, the brand, the capsule collections, the different kind of licensing deals that there are. So in a lot of ways, it opens up more possibilities. But I just worry about, like, this social media driven age. It's just like, what's new, what's exciting? And it's, and that's what I keep telling my daughter, because she's just starting to model and she wants to do everything. I'm like, you don't want people to get sick of you before you're out of high school, like, just, you can take it slow.
When you look at this next generation of models, what would your advice be to them in terms of planning for the long term? Beyond just not overexposing.
Yeah, I think it's just that. It's like, play the long game. I think, again, and it depends on the young, the model, and I think this is true for any business, like, if you're worried that, oh my God, if I don't seize this moment, it might not be here again, you don't always make the best decisions. It's like, if you're in the long game and you just can have faith that you can ride that, it allows you to not grab every opportunity, even, because sometimes it's not quite right, and you have to have faith to let that one pass and kind of know that the next, or maybe the next one after that is going to be a better fit.
I'm sure that is a lesson that holds true in many businesses as well. For you, it's interesting that you're investing in businesses now. You mentioned that you've made some biotech investments. How do you decide what you want to spend your time doing for your own, how you split your time between your two companies, and also what types of investments to make?
Right. Well, I mean, definitely, I think my number one thing that I invest in is myself and my own businesses, because I have the most control. I understand those businesses, and frankly, the return's been the best usually, because I know what I'm doing. I feel comfortable in that world. But some of and I told you recently, I've been doing some biotech stuff, and I guess my main prerequisite is I have to at least understand it a little, like enough that I could explain to you what I'm investing in, which isn't always easy with the biotech stuff. But to me, it's just interesting, and a lot of that stuff, one of the investments I made, it's an immunotherapy for cancer patients, and I lost a brother to leukemia, and that's why my friend introduced me to this investment. But I felt like, gosh, even if I lose all my money, I'm literally helping cure cancer, So like I felt good about that. Other things, I don't know. It could be, there's an ice cream thing that I recently. I think it's two women have this company, and it's just, I liked it. I thought it was cool.
And is the ice cream good?
It's really good.
You have to tell us what it's called now.
I can't do that.
Okay.
And then what else? Just different things. But if I don't understand it, like sometimes some of the financial stuff, I'm like, wait, I don't understand that. But like, if I can understand it and I go, yeah, that sounds cool, that would be something I'm interested in that much. And also, I don't put in, I don't bet my children. Because it is like a bet in a way, right? You put in what you feel comfortable with, I'm not trying to me. And then another company, and actually part of the reason I'm here tonight is because my friend Vince knows Jamie, but he would kind of gave me an education a few years ago about he's like, I just want to show you what's going on in this digital world. And one of the companies he introduced me to was a company called Urban Remedy, and it's, they make juices and salads and all organic, and I loved the owner, and she was super, she's a CEO, was running the company at the time, and I liked it. So it was like, yeah, that's cool, I like that. So I don't know.
So we're almost out of time, but I feel like my last question should be any advice you have to the many female entrepreneurs who are in the audience?
I went to a women's business boot camp thing at UCLA last fall, and I kind of was like, well, I just want to go to the business boot camp. Why am I just lumped in with the women? But after I got over that, and I was there, what I loved about being with this group of women is how much we shared, and how no question was a dumb question, and the stories, we weren't just sitting in a class together. We got, by the end of this 3-day seminar, we got to know each other as women. And I think that's the thing that women do better, that they do best, is the sense of community, the sense of support, the sense of making yourself vulnerable and sharing those vulnerabilities and then finding strength in each other. So I think that we're lucky that we're sitting here. There are a few guys here. I don't know how they snuck in. But that we're lucky to be surrounded by a group of incredible women that we can use as a resource.
What a perfect note to end on. Cindy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.